Hey, what's up YouTube? Jason here with Jason Bytes Back, episode number 35, or 35 for you Spanish impaired people out there. That's me, by the way. This is a series of which I answer and respond to questions and or comments throughout the last month, except for this time, I actually pulled every single question or comment from last month's Jason's Bytes Back. Wow, that's kind of a tongue twister. You know what? I'm keeping it. So just keep that in mind. If you want the best chance of having your comment or question featured in next month's Jason Bytes Back video, make sure to leave your comment down below. So I usually try to start off these Jason Bytes Back videos with like a short little channel update, but I can't really say too much this month except for one, that I agreed to do, and two, I finally got my wall done. So as you can see, the new shelf is up. That's kind of cool. I really like how that turned out. I might still shuffle a few things around on the back there just to make it look a little bit better. I might even look at some different lighting. So the only thing I really have to do is play around with the LEDs and the colors and the shadows and try to get all of that. Because one of the biggest thing was the shadows that I didn't like in the last one. So I have to kind of sort of play around with that still a little bit more and tweak it a little bit more. But I've been so busy trying to get the wall painted and sanded and painted again and kind of organized, and building this logo that's lighting up like that was actually a ginormous pain in the rear, and that took a lot of time as well. So again, just in case you didn't watch that build video, do not spray paint MDF. It sucks. So yeah. But hey, let me know in the comments down below what you think about the wall. And for the second thing, I actually have something that I agreed to do in coordinates with a settlement that I had with Jeff from Craft Computing. So yeah, I, Jason from Byte My Bits, was not authorized to use any images or likeness of Jeff from Craft Computing in the production or distribution of apparel. In accordance to the agreed upon settlement, I officially apologize to Jeff, also known as Craft Computing, for using his likeness and for any misrepresentation of his brand. The image used did not reflect in any way his personal preference of alcoholic beverages, and any suggestion otherwise was a complete fabrication on my part. Per our agreement, any images used during the last Jason Bytes Back video has been blurred and removed to avoid any further misunderstandings. Furthermore, combined with removing his images used in previous videos, I will not use the shirt for any future videos, thus completing our agreement. And again, I apologize to Jeff from Craft Computing for illegally using his likeness. So now that that court settlement is out of the way, let's go on to the technically first question. Is from Maddie. He says, are you going to LTX this year? That is actually kind of a loaded question because, well, with the whole coronavirus thing going on, which I kind of wonder if I'm gonna get demonetized saying that word, I really don't know. I actually think that I will be. I think that this whole thing is going to kind of die down, and, you know, just the way the economy works. I mean, at some point we're going to have to open up borders and open up stores and things like that eventually. So I kind of feel like this is more of a seasonal thing, and by the time August hits, it's going to be okay. But a lot of that could also just be, I basically paid almost $4,000 to go to LTX with the flight and the hotel and all that other stuff, and I did not get insurance. So God, it is gonna suck if I can't go, because I will have no way to cancel my trip and get a refund. So I'm going to Canada if they'll let me into Canada. Whether or not LTX is happening, I have no idea, but if they'll let me into Canada, I am going, and I'm staying in my hotel because I already paid for it, and that would really suck, so. Next question is from Toby. Thoughts on running Plex and the associated apps like NZB, Git, Sonar, Radar, etc. in Docker containers? Well, Toby, that's personally how I run Plex. I don't run anything like NZB, Git, Sonar, or Radar, but I run Plex in a Docker container, and I definitely say that it is a great way to run Plex. The only caveat here is that if you're using Unraid and you're running Docker, then if you assign, like, let's say your graphics card to the Plex Docker itself, then you can't use that for anything else. Like, you can only use it for one Docker at a time. But if you wanted to, like, let's say this whole recent folding at home thing. If you wanted to be able to use that GPU for Plex and something else like folding at home, you could just as easily set up a virtual machine or a VM, install Plex on that virtual machine, map all your drives and everything you need to so Plex can see your media folder, and then you could use and assign that graphics card to the virtual machine, and within that same virtual machine run Plex and other applications needing that GPU. So I wholeheartedly agree that it is good to run Plex from a Docker, but if you want to use something like hardware acceleration or your graphics card for multiple things, it's probably better to set up a VM, assign that to your VM, and then you can use that underneath that VM for multiple different things. But for simplicity, Docker is definitely the way to go for me. Next question is from VTech. Been following your videos for a while. Pretty sure I have my server set up the same as yours. I'm getting codec conversion errors. I may have narrowed it down to Plex not being able to EAC3 audio. Well, VTech, I've actually ran into this problem a couple different times, and I finally figured out that what I had to do was basically move all of the information, like the Plex data, metadata folder, move that to a separate SSD or a separate hard drive, back it all up, and then completely wipe, format, and delete everything on the SSD, and then recopy everything over. And a few people said something about trim or something on the SSD that was causing issues like reading and writing the codec folder and stuff like that. But me copying things back and forth, solved that problem for me. So if I were you, I would try that. Move everything to an external drive or just a different drive, wipe the SSD, and then move everything back and reassign everything and see if your Plex works. You might have to fix your permissions, but that might be a good step to troubleshoot the existing hardware you have. And if that doesn't do it, then your SSD might be going bad, the SSD that holds your metadata. Either way, good luck. Next question is from Eli, the electronics guy. Hey, that's like Eli, the computer guy. I used to watch that guy. Kind of fell off the map a little bit and kind of went a little, What is the best way to back up Unraid to an external USB drive? I have only 5 terabytes to use and bought a 10 terabyte drive that I would like to use as cold backup to take off site. Well, since I assume you're talking about the data on Unraid, are you talking about like Plex movie data? Because if you're talking about actually Unraid, that's stored on a USB drive, and backing up Unraid in that sense would just be, copying the stuff off your USB drive. But if you're looking to back up and copy the stuff off of your actual storage onto an external drive, and you're thinking about Plex, well, it's going to be hard to have a mobile Plex setup like that, albeit not impossible. But if you want access to those media files, at least on a raw level where you can browse through the different files and play them manually, you could definitely do that. What I would recommend though, rather than using like the Windows Explorer and just going in, navigating, finding your stuff, copying and pasting over to your USB drive, I would probably try to hook your USB drive up to Unraid, because usually it can see it without any kind of issues. Install the application called Unassigned Devices, and then you can activate that drive in Unraid, and then you can use an SSH command to copy everything over to that external hard drive a lot faster than you can do through the network connected, Windows interface on your computer. So plug it in, install Unassigned Devices, and use SSH to copy it for much faster speeds. Next question is from Adj. Have you considered making an SSD server /NAS with consumer SSDs? Would there be any downside to buying, let's say, 8 times 1 terabyte Crucial MX500s and running them in FreeNAS or Unraid? I have considered doing this before, but if I do something like this, I'm probably not going to use Unraid. Unraid is definitely, it has a speed difference when it comes to FreeNAS. And if I was going to build a server like this, most likely I wouldn't be able to saturate past a 10 gig connection anyway. But if I were going to build it, I would use FreeNAS just because it's going to be just a little bit faster in read and write performance. Unraid is fantastic for bulk storage and be able to add drives as you go, but when it just comes to raw speed, that's kind of where FreeNAS likes to flex a little bit. Next question is from Justin. Jason, I am prepping for the transition from Windows to Unraid. I have WD drives being used as external devices through USB. I plan on shucking them after copying my media off of them and putting them into SATA enclosures. Would Preclear be necessary, as I have been using them for around a year? Any tips for the transition? I want it to be as smooth and seamless. Well, Justin, here's the thing. I know from personal experience that people who had working external USB drives shucked those later on after using them for, let's say, a year, and found that when they ran Preclear, they ran into a bunch of hard drive errors. Granted, those were all Seagate drives that failed miserably, and I'm not going to put any correlation to the failure of Seagate drives over Western Digital drives. If it were me, personally, I would say YOLO. If you can back all that stuff up anyways, just start the unraid array and just let it do its thing. It's more or less probably going to find an error through building it. Definitely would not do that with the Seagate drive though. But if you really want to play it safe, yes, I would recommend running Preclear at least one time. And you don't even have to shuck the drive to run Preclear. And I only say that because it has been used as an external drive for a year. So there's potential, it's hit some heat limitations that might have degraded the drive. Maybe you jostled it around while messing with it. Maybe you unplugged it and moved it too fast. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why an external drive can fail pretty quickly compared to one that's mounted in a server. So playing it safe and running at least one Preclear could be beneficial and allow you to find errors before you dedicate an entire system to the reliability of that drive. Next question is from Matt Kinsey. Hey Jason, possible question for your next video, hardware acceleration using Plex on FreeNAS. If you put a graphics card in your server, do you need to set the BIOS to use the graphics, yada, yada, yada. Basically, I'm gonna stop right there because as far as I know, without some major tweaking, and even then, I don't even know if it's possible, you cannot use FreeNAS with Plex hardware acceleration. Like there's a kernel, it's like something Linux 12 or something like that. It's just FreeNAS can't really do it right now. I think it's in the works and it might work in the future, but for right now, as far as I know, you can't do that. But if anyone knows any different, leave in the comments down below because honestly, I do not use FreeNAS really past last time I made a video. So it's been a long time since I dabbled or messed with anything FreeNAS. So let them know in the comments down below if I'm wrong. Next question is from Ridisi61. How do you back up your 300 terabyte server and how much does it cost? To be 100 completely honest, in the most worst fashion ever, I do not back up my main media collection at all. I have no backup. I rely solely on the redundancy of what Unraid offers, and I just kind of hope everything works out for me. Pretty much it's a lot of data. It costs a lot of money to use anything like an online service to back all that up, not to mention the bandwidth associated with uploading everything to the cloud, or however I would choose, it would still be a large quantity of information to back up and would be rather expensive. It's something that I'm considering in the future, but it's a very low priority just because of the data that I'm handling. It's not like crucial or anything. I do, however, have about 10 to 15 terabytes worth of crucial data, backups and things that I just absolutely cannot lose. And I have a number of different ways of backing that stuff up, but it's usually part cloud, like a cloud service, like Google Drive or something like that. Or for the main bulk of it, the larger bulk of it, I have a copy of it on a set of RAID drives on my main computer, along with it being on my Unraid server. But yes, at the end of the day, my backup game is a little weak. I do have a little bit, but it's kind of weak. Next question is from Uplink Pro. I have questions that might be best for a whole video. As an ESXi user, should I swap from running FreeNAS in a VM to Unraid in a VM? Or would Unraid be good enough replacement for ESXi altogether? To be 100% completely honest, I've never used ESXi. Which has got to be honest, never used it. But if I had to say anything here, I would say that running Unraid from a virtual machine, just because it is a paid platform and it uses the UID of your flash drive to register the software itself, I'd say it might be pretty difficult, if not impossible, to run it in a virtual machine underneath a different system. So if you wanted to switch to Unraid, you might have to run it as your root operating system. And as far as it being good enough replacement for ESXi, I honestly don't know. Unraid works a lot for me. It handles everything I want out of my server. I don't know exactly how it compares, but Unraid for me has been a pretty robust system. The biggest benefit for me, in my opinion, is really the ability to add, different sized hard drives at any time, thus being able to expand your storage array as easy as just putting in a drive and just adding it to your array list. That's basically one of the biggest selling points for Unraid for me, is being able to expand as you can afford adding more drives. And it's just super easy, and you still get parity up to 2 different drives with Unraid. So It's nice, you have that parity there, and it's so easy to add additional storage. Last question is from Kent. Does the transcoding process effort depend more on the target resolution than the source resolution? Obviously, if they are both the same, then no transcoding is required. However, transcoding from 4K to 1080 would probably be more resource intensive from 4K to 720p. My thinking is that the program will have to encode the outgoing stream to the outgoing resolution. I think the higher the outgoing resolution, more resources it would take. Kent, you're actually right, but there are two parts to this. One, Plex has to decode the stream and encode the stream when it's doing this transcoding. So using a 4K versus a 1080 as an input still takes more to decode that video, but you are correct when it comes to if you're transcoding it to a higher resolution or a higher bitrate video, it does take more resources. Which is why when I'm doing my test and I'm testing transcoding things, I usually try to stick to one very specific bitrate, usually 2 or 4 megabits per second. When I'm transcoding 1080p files, I take a 1080p down to I think a 720 at 2 megabits per second. And when I'm transcoding a 4K file, I take it from the 4K, whatever it is, down to 4 megabits per second. But I make sure to keep that constant because there's a lot of factors that come into play there, which includes the writing the information to the SSD or the temporary transcoding folder, along with the overall horsepower needed to render a larger or smaller video file. So if you were to take something like a 1080p file that's 20 megabits per second, transcode it down to 10 megabits per second, it would take a lot more resources to do that than it would to transcode it down to something like, I don't know, 140p or something. Well guys, that is it for the questions. As always, this video is brought to you by my awesome Patreon subscribers. Again, their names are going to be listed at the end of this video, so for all you Patreon peeps out there, thank you very much for throwing money at me like a dirty old hooker. Yeah. If I didn't get demonetized for coronavirus, I probably got demonetized for saying dirty hooker. But thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and have yourself a good night. Ooh, man. So I found something out with this laptop. I've been messing with folding at home. I set up everything, and I'm thinking about making a video, but now it's kind of cliche because everyone does it. I set up everything in my house to run folding at home. I'm actually folding for Barnacle team. I think I have like 15 or 16 million points now. Maybe I'm closer to 20 now, but I set up everything. My Unraid server, I set up my DVR, my little Angry Inch micro build, and my main computer, which has a 2080 Ti and a 1080 Ti. My DVR has a 980 Ti. The Angry Inch micro build has a a P2000. This has a 970M. So I set up everything. Like I hooked up every single thing I could, making like, I don't know, 4 to 5 million points a day when I could actually get work units. But I found out that this thing, one, as you would imagine, an old crappy laptop does not do much more than like 50,000 points per day. But two, this thing actually overheats for extended use, just shuts off. Cannot handle it. I don't blame it. I mean, it is what it is, but yeah, almost burned it up. But everyone out there, if you want to help fight coronavirus, definitely consider downloading Folding at Home, setting it up, and setting it to use your computer while it's idle. It won't cost you too much in electricity, hopefully, but it will help fight this pandemic and then possibly help me go to LTX because it probably won't have any major impact on LTX. I'm just, being selfish. And just in case nobody knew, yes, it is April 1st, okay? The whole craft computing thing, totally a joke. It was a month in the building, and this is the payoff for me. So, thanks, Jeff, for being a good sport. All right, I'm out.